honest, but it's really sincere. On the contrary, they're actually proud of it. So you may be thinking that what happened in Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Mao's China, Pol Pot's Cambodia, scores of other countries can't happen in the US, or for that matter, can't happen in Canada for some reason. But let me posit that the proportion of sociopaths here in society, and among the 7 billion people on the face of the planet, is constant, I think, across space and time. I'm mainly a believer in nature as opposed to nurture. I mean, it's an interesting separate discussion. But I think that the population of sociopaths is pretty constant across space and time. Only at sometimes, when conditions are right, do they evidence themselves. It's like mushrooms after a rainstorm. You don't know they're there until after it rains and they blossom. And I'm suggesting that we're having a rainstorm now. I'll give you one piece of evidence for that. In the United States, we've got about 60,000 or so people that are working for the TSA. And my question is this, is where did they find 60,000 generally middle-aged people to go and put on a costume and act in a degraded way and degrade other people? What kind of a human being would do that? They must have been doing something else before. So I suggest to you that there's a heavy population of sociopaths among the TSA. And the creation of an organization like the TSA has drawn them out from under the rocks, much the way the creation of the Gestapo or the Stasi or the NKVD or any of these hundreds of organizations across time and space always drew out those sociopaths that maybe they liked kids, they liked dogs, Hitler liked kids and dogs, they liked to play baseball on the weekends, but when they see that opportunity, TSA, extra couple dollars an hour and benefits, they're drawn to that and they start reinforcing themselves. And if there's any decent human beings working in a criminal organization like that, they're eventually driven out and the whole organization becomes corrupt from top to bottom. So these things get worse. They don't get better. They can necessarily get worse for just that reason. Now part of this is also an expression of Pareto's law. I'm sure we're all somewhat familiar with that. It's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your salesmen do 80% of the selling. 80% of the crime in society is by 20% of the people. That 80-20 rule is actually quite accurate. It works everywhere. The application of it I would use here is that, my opinion, is that 80% of human beings are basically decent. They're not libertarians, but they're basically decent, get along, go along. That's why society kind of hangs together the way it is. But out of that 20%, those people might be called potential trouble sources. And 20% of that 20% are actual bad apples. They're actual criminal personalities. They're actual sociopaths. Then you take 20% of that 20%, and you're dealing with really bad actors, really dangerous people. And I think that they're coming to the fore at this point. Now, why does the average person accept this situation? These criminal organizations that are now coming to the fore, not just in the US, not just in Canada, but all over the world. Governments are getting out of control. This is true everywhere in the world today. They're all going on the rampage. And you might wonder why that is. And I can give you two reasons for this. One is that the average person has no philosophical anchor. I mean, really, he's never actually thought, no way he's ever listened to any of Stefan's shows. He's never thought about, the implications of what's actually right and wrong. He believes what he just hears or some teacher, some government employee told him. So I'd say that's the number one thing. So they don't even have the intellectual around it. And as I pointed out, the problem isn't even intellectual. It's spiritual and psychological, but they don't even have the intellectual grounding to start with. And the second reason, certainly referring to America, is the whole country has become a nation of limp dicks. It's, I'm so tired of hearing this blather about the land of the free and the home of the brave, support our brave troops and all this. It's all so much bullshit. So, all right, so what's going to happen now? I think that sociopathy, because these organizations have been created, the government has become virulent, the average person, especially as the economic situation gets worse, and I think it's going to get much worse. We're just in the eye of the economic storm right now. As we go out the other edge of the economic storm, which will be much worse and last much longer, much, much longer than what happened in 2008 and 2009, I think that there's going to be a cry from the average person all over the world, Europe, China, Japan, US, Canada, everywhere, for the government to do something. Because everybody has been programmed to believe the government's a magic cornucopia that can solve problems, even though it's the one that causes the problems. It's so perverse, it's so backwards. It makes me, well, what am I doing on this planet with all these crazy chimpanzees? I must have committed some crime elsewhere in the universe to be perfect. So, I think that the trends in motion tend to stay in motion and tend to accelerate, much the way when you roll a snowball down a hill from the top of the mountain. It gathers and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And is it going to reach the size of the earth? No. And eventually, when it hits the village at the bottom of the valley, it explodes itself, destroys the village, and then things start over again. But the thing is only halfway down the mountain yet. So what's going to happen politically, because politics is the real nature of the problem, what's going to happen? Well, first of all, people shouldn't think politically. I think it's a big mistake on the part of libertarians, considering that sociopaths are automatically drawn to politics like flies drawn to a pile of dog crap. So it's a mistake for libertarians, I think, to think politically and talk about politics. I'm doing it now simply because I want to identify the problem, okay? But my idea of a proper president, assuming you have to have a president, which I don't assume, is the president of the Swiss Confederation. There's a prosperous, peaceful country. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody cares, because it doesn't make any difference. So that's the ideal president. When it comes to American presidents, my favorite president is William Henry Harrison. Why? Because he was only in office a month before he died. So he couldn't have done much damage. But in those days, the government was vastly less powerful anyway, and therefore much less attractive to sociopaths. So these two parties in the United States, you got the equivalent here. Most countries in the world have a so-called liberal and so-called let's say a conservative party, but they're all quite similar. And it's very interesting. The stupid party, which is the right wing of the Demo-Republican Party, has gotten into the habit of picking old, hostile, mildly demented white men. And the left wing of the Republican Party is more innovative. Now they got a slick young black guy, very presentable, very personable. So this is an interesting runoff they got between these two guys coming up here. But I'll tell you why the average person intuitively despises the right wing of the Demo-Republican Party, the stupid party. They intuitively distrust and despise them because they can intuit that they're dishonest. Why do I say that? It's because the Republicans definitely don't believe in social freedom, but they say they believe in economic freedom, okay? But that's a lie, of course, because most of the worst economic laws have been made under Republicans, as a historical fact. And